going for it. All right. Thank you, everybody, for being on here. I certainly appreciate it. Amplify's ongoing training. We do this every week, and we call it our F&I tune-up because what it is we just want to make sure that we give all of our dealers, all the people, an opportunity to just take 20 minutes. I try and keep it nice, quick, and simple. Um, just go over something that we can try and help sharpen that F&I skill when it comes to just the little things. And we may cover some stuff that you know a ton about, and that's awesome. But hopefully I can find something to where, you can come away with these and say, gosh, I'm going to use that. I like that one thing. So let's kick right into it. So understanding our F&I products. This is we're doing a 12-part series. We're at week 5, and we're doing is every week we're just going through one F&I product, one part of the F&I process. This is actually going to be our last F&I product for a little bit. We've got some processes coming up next week, but this week we're coming to fully understand our F&I products. Why? Because it's going to build that instant credibility between you and the customer. When you don't have to sit there and look at the contract and yeah, I think it says you want to be able to just know some of this stuff off the top of your head. You're not going to have it all memorized. If you do, that's awesome. But you want to have a really good understanding because then that allows you to not just sell customers, you want to educate them. And then you're educating and not selling. And that's when your PVRs and your closing numbers are going to go way, way up. So um, all of these are huge things that'll create that natural transition from the customer interview, which if you haven't seen our customer interview training, it's on YouTube. So please visit our YouTube and watch that if you haven't seen that yet. Great training on that. And so we'll flow naturally from that customer interview to giving the menu presentation, which is what we're going to be starting to work on next week. All right. So this week, F&I product knowledge, payment protection plan. This is an Ampli-Fi first. The Ampli-Fi was one of the first programs to come out with this. I haven't seen anybody else doing this, which is really cool. So payment protection. So reimburse the customer a prorated amount of their payment if the unit is in the repair shop for more than 10 days. It's very, very simple. It answers that question of who's going to make my payment while my ride's in the shop. I got to make a payment while my ride's in the shop. We've all heard it. We've all seen it. It affects the CSI as much as anything. So payment protection plan was built to protect against that. So customers ride goes in the shop. It's going to be 10 days before we get the part. So it's going to spend 15 days in service because of labor and how backed up they are and everything. We're going to take the customer's payment, divide it by 30 days, and then however many days it's in the shop, we're going to kick them that money. So basic example, customer's payment's $300. It's in the shop for 10 days. We're going to take that 300 divided by 30, which is $10 a day. It was in the shop for 10 days. We're going to kick the customer a check for $100. Best part about this program is it's going to cover up to 3 payments. So you're talking 90 days in the shop. Now, I know it's not unheard of for a ride to be in the shop for 90 days, but it is way past the norm. And if it is the norm at your dealership, you might want to look into some things. Just saying that on a side note. But big things to know. Only 3 payments on one stay, but it's $2,500 limited liability for the life of the program. So if that $300 example we were talking about, they would pay up to $900 for one stay. But you could do 2 or 3 stays. Now, if your machine is in the shop for 90 days plus 2 or 3 times, again, let's look into the machine. I didn't know Ford started making side-by-sides. Just kidding. I told you I worked at Toyota. That was my one joke. Okay, I got it out of the way. We can all work through it. But one big thing is customers reimbursed from the admin on this. So a big bonus to your dealership. Once you've got the customer on payment protection plan, it's the customer's responsibility to take their RO, send it into admin, and admin pays them. It leaves your dealership completely out of it, which frees you guys up for not having to do so much paperwork, and you're not putting another burden on your service department. So all good things to remember. Okay. answer to the age-old question, and I think I got old right. I think that's the abbreviation for it. If not, I'm working with it. But am I going to have to make a payment on a unit I can't ride? Who is going to make my payment? This program was built for this specific question, which is why it gets its own fancy slide. You want to make sure that you're mentioning this in multiple spots. And this is something that you can get along to your salespeople as well, to where you can start laying that foundation. If we have customers that come right out of service, oh, my rig's in service right now, and I want to trade it in to go to another one because of this, and this that's going wrong with it. These are all things that lead to this program. So having everybody in your store on the same page with it is a huge one, but that's going to be on you as a finance manager to make sure we're training the rest of our staff on what our programs are. So maybe a little side thing, something to do in the meantime, but that's what payment protection's for, is this exact question. And when you go out and do a customer interview and you talking about it and something comes up where, oh yeah, I've had my ride in service or it's been in service a lot, those are things that's going to lead you right down the path to where you want to make sure you spend an extra second or two on talking to them about payment protections, because it's going to be very beneficial to them. Okay, every product session I do, I feel it's important to bring up the contract and go through a segment of it. And for those of you who've been through a couple of my trainings, I'll spend a minute or two on this, because you need to make sure that you're reading your contracts on every program that you have and knowing where stuff is in your contract. And like I said, you don't necessarily need to have everything memorized, but having a familiarity with it is key. A lot of finance managers I've done trainings with over years, bringing up a contract and they act like it's the first time that they've read it. And I'm like, how long have you been a finance manager? So I encourage to make sure that we're reading our contracts every once in a while, just to kind of refresh ourselves. So payment protections contract, this is a good snippet from it. So agreement terms, just like we talked about, as long as it's in the repair facility for 10 days, that's when it qualifies. And then it prorates back to day one. So once you get to day 10, we go back to day one, and that's how much they pay on. So if it's in there for 20 days, you don't minus out the 10. It's just 20 days. It's flat and simple. Okay. We talked about that limit of liability, that the admin, we're going to reimburse the prorated amount based on the 30 days. Now, the reason that proration is important is not only because when you say, oh, we're just going to pay your payment for you, you want to make sure that you're mentioning that. That's something to mention to a customer so you can avoid a potential CSI pitfall when this happens, is that a customer comes in and this says, well, it was in the shop for 10 days. My payment's $500 a month. Where's my check? You want to make sure that you've broken this down just a little bit, just to make sure that you've mentioned that. So that way the customer knows it's not just a $500 check. It's going to be a prorated amount of that. So just make sure that we're mentioning that. Very important on that. But that limit of liability, $2,500. So if they've got some of these side by sides, we all know some of the motorcycles, they can get up there at a price tag where you're feeling like you're buying, a truck or a car or whatever it might be. Uh, when you get to those payments and you've got customers $800-900 a month, that limit of liability is something you want to make sure they have in the back of your mind, to make sure that you're mentioning, because $1,000 a month, they go in for one stay for 2 or 3 months, you're going to eat that up. But again, for the customer, that's $2,500 they didn't have. That's $2,500 that they could put towards their payments because their ride was in the shop for a recall or whatever it might be. So make sure that we're going through that. Now, part of this is right over here, limit of liability, and the second paragraph down in that paragraph, it mentions something. Payment protection program is something to where even if they pay their loan off, they still get the benefit if it goes back into service, as long as they haven't reached their limit of liability. So if, let's say they have that, I'm going to do a 24-month and pay my loan off super fast. Well, then year 3 rolls around and they have to have it in service. They still get a payment from payment protection for having it in service. They just base it off of a standard $350 payment. So even if they pay it off, they're going to still get a payment, quote unquote, of $350 if it's got to be in service for 30 days. or the prorated amount based on that 350. So huge selling bonus to customers who might be doing short-term financing, to let them know, hey, this lasts for 5 years. And if in that 5 years you're gonna, you can work on that limit of liability up to 2,500 bucks. Even if you pay it off, you're still going to get some payments. So I think a lot of people don't really realize that, and we want to make sure that we're covering that. Along with that, we'll go into the last one where it says the agreement term, purchase date expires in 5 years. So it's a 5-year program. So make sure that you know that going into it, because it is on the contract. It'll have a spot to say that it's a 5-year program, but we want to make sure that the customer's doing longer term financing, 72, 84 months, that we are mentioning, hey, this is a 5-year program. So it's just for that first 5 years of them owning it. Okay. So all good things there. Move on here. Tell ways to present the payment protection. All right. I like to offer up a couple different ways that you can introduce it, that you can show it, that you can kind of walk through it. And maybe it's going to give you a different angle or something that you can help with some other customers. First thing is asking a customer questions if they've had repairs done on a ride, and who made their payment while it was in service. Because if they've never had payment protection, you already know the answer to all of this. If anybody's owned a side by side or a motorcycle or anything, they've had it in service and they've had a service experience for sure. And it's just a natural way of how it goes. So getting them to talk about that and letting them know, hey, we're going to take care of you. Here's some programs we have that's going to take care of you. Plus, did you have anybody make the payments for you while it was in service? Well, no. Perfect. I'm going to talk to you about that when we get in the F&I office. Let me go out there and I'll take care of it. That's how you can set that up in a customer interview. Smooth. I didn't try and sell it. I just put that little, I just planted the seed, and I'm trying to grow some sequoias. Okay. So that is a good way of doing that, and just bringing that up to get that thought process going. Cause that's what a lot of these programs are going to be, is just getting the customers to think a little bit different way and getting them to that point where we can educate them. So they just start saying yes. All right. We talked about this already. I kind of double covered it, and I'd rather double cover it than not. If you pay it off early, you still get the protection. So you can still pay yourself if you have to have repairs done. Just remembering to mention that, because a lot of customers are going to think in their mind, great, if I pay this off, I'm not going to get it anymore. Make sure that we're kind of walking through that a little bit with them, to let them know, even if you pay it off, you've still got payment protection there. Now, I want to piggyback this one real quick. It's a little bit of an offshoot. We are okay, and we've talked about this in a training yesterday. If your service department wants to have customers who are having some service work done, bring them to you, and you want to sell payment protection outside of the loan, you can do that. If a customer wants to come in and say, man, I've had, 1 or 2 stays in service and I feel I could use this, you can sell it. Now, we're not going to go and do it for the, they're not going to get buy payment protection and say, oh, well, I just had the service work done. Can I turn in my RO? That, unfortunately, is not how this works. However, they can buy it for their next time. And if the next time something happens, they can do that. So this isn't something that's tied to like gap insurance, where you have to have a loan present to do this. No, if you want to, customer wants to come in and do payment protection after the fact, or if you want to call customers that you've done loans with in the past and you want to have this as a way to try and get them to come back in, or sell them some finance product after the fact, which I wholly heartedly can condone. If you want to do that, that's a great program to do. This is a great one to do that with. So just make sure that we don't pray any pre-existings. Just throwing it out there. All right. Great bundle product. Okay. Payment protection program is probably one of the most perfect products to an additional for bundles. If anybody's taken trainings with me in the past, I am a pairing and or bundle, whatever you like to call it, grouping them together. I'm a huge proponent of all of this, because one, grouping products together, you're using the greatness of one product to help add another one to it. This is a great situation too for when you have customers come in and they say, and we've all had them where they sit down and they say, I have to have gap insurance. 100% have to have gap insurance. No problem. Obviously, had something happen and you want to make sure you have gap insurance coverage, right? Yes, absolutely. Perfect. Something that we always, pair well with gap insurance is payment protection. Why? Because we call it our loan protection package, and go into the reasons why gap and payment protection work well together. Because if you're protecting your loan against a total, or you're protecting your loan if it's in repair, either way, your loan's protected. It's a great way to protect yourself. Here you go. Make sure that you are working on your bundles and your pairings, because the more you work on this, you will see your contracts per unit go up. And that's what's the key for driving a higher PVR and higher averages, which all in turn higher pockets, bigger. That's because that's why we're all here. One, we all love power sports, and that's great, but we all love putting a little bit more money in the bank if we can. And this is a great way to do that. And I'm not just saying this because it might be your homework, but bundles are a great way to do so. So weird. Off to homework. Look at us. Look at what we're doing here. So every week, I've got homework for you. It's not something you turn in. It is total pass fail in your own head. You can give yourself the best grade or the worst grade. It's up to you. Hopefully, everybody out there has a positive attitude. But if you know you've earned something less than an A, just like I tell my kids, then maybe give yourself that grade. But you have a chance to get an A+ right here. So homework for this week: work on your bundles and your pairings. What programs does payment protection fit well with? And have a couple bundles ready to go, not just with payment protection. This is because we've talked over the last 4 or 5 weeks with lifetime battery, with gap insurance, with the 1 year VSC program, and with payment protection program, theft insurance. All of those programs have little tie-ins that fit with each one's. I want you to find a couple programs that work perfect for you. Your What gets you excited? Because when you're excited about something, that's when you're going to have the most success. It's not because whatever works well for me, however, whatever programs that I love might not work, might not be the favorite programs of every finance manager out there. And I get that. So I understand that energy is what's going to sell a vast majority of what we're doing. Having that education, being able to talk to a customer and answer all their questions just like that is key. But having some energy that goes along with that, that's what's going to really help you out with all of these programs. So if you've got some pre-made in your head programs that work well together, that's going to make you way more successful. It's like we talked about with Gap. Someone comes in and says, I have to have Gap. Perfect. What other programs can you pair with Gap? And what are a couple of the features and benefits that fit with that? Like we talked about with payment protection, they're loan protection programs. So they're both going to cover you in this case and this. So your loan is protected. If you're working with a VSC, what programs fit well with a VSC? Most people love it, VSC, and they have some kind of maintenance program. They pair those two together because what do they call it? That gas and go program. Look, your maintenance is covered, and if something breaks, you're covered. Put some gas in it, drive it, right? Same thing. We want to have that energy with all of our programs. And if we really start to dive into what these ancillaries have, this that back end of our menu, where we're not just VSE, a little Gap, and then the rest. But if we really focus on that rest and say, all right, I've got a way to pair this with this program, that's going to make you way more successful. But I want to make sure it fits for what your dealership culture is, what your style of selling is, what you get excited about. For me, I'll be 100% honest, I am a Gap fan through and through. I mentioned earlier, I used to work for Toyota in the auto space, and unfortunately, wife had a Memorial Day accident while I was at work, and fastest I've ever driven on street roads to get to her and the kids. And unfortunately, our Sequoia took a turn for the worst with a Sienna van head on in a collision, and $18,000 later, Gap was writing a check. So I'm a huge proponent of that. And I tell that story every time I was in finance and every customer I had. And I'll tell you what, my Gap numbers were through the roof. But if I would have used that and then paired that energy with some other programs, I know I could have been more successful. And I'll admit that. We'll come up on my shortcomings. But learn from that and say, look, if we are really good at this program, I really love selling this program. What can we pair with that program? And what can I start to add on to that to really grow what I sell? That way, instead of 1 to maybe 2 contract kind of penetration, I'm getting 3 to 4. And that 3 to 4 is going to increase your PVR. So it's going to be huge in all the aspects. And it's going to really help you out. And it's going to help out your pocketbook, which is why we're all here. Um, so anybody got any questions, payment protection, anything reliable, anything that I can maybe help out with while we're here? I would love to go through with that. Like I said, I try and keep these about 20 minutes. I know our time is more valuable spent out on the floor, but 20 minutes to try and improve ourselves every week is a huge one. So I really appreciate everybody being here. So any questions?
I have one.
Yes.
I might have missed it when you were under the who makes the payment wallets in the shop.
Yes.
It's a reimbursement, right? The customer still makes payments as usual, and you send them the prorated portion based off of the RO, correct?
You are 100% correct. That is the best question I've had with this training so far. Thank you very much. Yes. So, customer still makes their payment just like normal. Once the service is done, they get the RO that's completed. They send that into the admin. Admin sees, all right, was in the shop for 25 days. Then they get reimbursed for the payment. Very, very good question. Yes.
That's all I had. The rest
Oh,
was very
perfect.
thorough.
Well,
Thanks.
hey, I'll tell you what, that was a great question. I'm glad we recovered it, or if covered it a little bit differently or better. So awesome. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other questions for this morning, afternoon, wherever you're at? Okay, so if nobody's got anything else, next week we are going to start to dive into next portions of the finance process. We're going to start working on menu building and doing some calculations on how we work our approvals and stuff. So this is going to be a big week next week. So look forward to seeing everybody there. And in the meantime, my email is on all the emails for this. If you have any questions or something you'd like to see some training on, please don't hesitate, reach out, and I would love to get with you or do it one of these trainings. So everybody have a great week. Let's have a big weekend, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.